So in the last couple of episodes, we did some wanderings to the outer edges of what might motivate you in life and some of the bigger philosophical questions. I'd like to get back to brass tacks with the land of women and the dating stuff. And in particular, there's a question that I've been asked increasingly over, especially the last year, and it's the question about vulnerability. So I'll just preface this a little bit. I think over the last 10 to 15 years in certain major Western countries, there has been the invitation or the encouragement and the value of vulnerability has been pushed and brought to the table, right? So you have kind of big TED Talks and books. Brené Brown is a great exponent of this. And even in business consultancy, they talk about psychological safety as a thing that you should have in your corporate culture so people feel safe to be vulnerable in themselves. And that way you can have more connection and collaboration and cohesion in the workplace, and people can bring their full selves to work, right? So bring your full self to work, bring your full self to the relationship. Vulnerability has been growing in certain parts of the world. And I think it's kind of one of these sacred cows in a lot of modern dating and relationship work. You want to cultivate a atmosphere of vulnerability for yourself and your partner in order to have an intimate relationship. And a lot of people don't really question that. It's become such a part of the postmodern culture that we're in. But I've had a lot of messages from guys who say things like, I actually want more vulnerability. That sounds like the right direction that I want to go into, but it doesn't work. When I try to be more vulnerable and share these parts of me, bring myself to the table, it has the effect of scaring women away. And to the point where, you've put out this great philosophy for years, which is the end of games, like no more playing games.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And yet certain men in our audience are finding, well, I bring my vulnerable self to the table, but when I actually don't bring it and I act aloof or I don't text her for a few days, actually I get better results and she seems more engaged and it seems more successful. So a good number of our listeners are in this quandary. Sounds like I should be vulnerable, but in practice, it doesn't have the effect that I kind of hope. So how would you speak to that?
Well, vulnerability is another one of those words that we spam all over our consciousness, like authenticity, aura, that have kind of, I don't say lost their meaning, but they're genericized.
Mm-hmm.
Genericized meaning, they can mean all kinds of things. And the problem with vulnerability is, I think what guys are thinking is vulnerability is really just suckiness. You know what I mean? Where they're just oversharing, and okay, let me make a distinction here.
Yeah.
Being direct and being straight up authentic, let's use that word, is saying, here's the real me. I'm not playing games. There's no guile in what I'm saying. You can take it or leave it what I'm saying. I'm going to say this to you. And for instance, I like the way you look and I would like to date you. That's just flatly said. There's no game in there. There's no hidden agenda. The hidden agenda is the bad one, right? The agenda is great. The hidden agenda is the bad one. That's good. That's direct. That's authentic. That's vulnerable. But I think what guys are conflating with the concept of vulnerability is to dump all of their foibles and their depressions and their troubles and what they can't surmount and say, you know what, this is the real me. No one wants to hear it. In your relationship with your wife, long-term relationship, yeah. Now you're sharing this. You need to protector of your heart, which is your woman. You need somebody that supports you and loves you and cares if you're sick or hurt, something like that. But to dump it out to a woman you just started dating or just to start seeing, that it's the opposite of mystique. And I talk about mystique. I talk about it in my What Would Zan Do course, like that. I have a whole theme on that, which is the idea of giving her the persona of you arrives into her space, into her life, and drifts away to wherever. Maybe you can see her again later. It doesn't matter. She's now thinking about that man she met. Wow, there's something about him. There's something about him that I can't stop thinking about. What is that? What is that quality? What is that trait? What is that behind his eyes? That mischief-laden thing behind his eyes that she's going, wow, I met this guy. He's not tall. He's not good, the most good-looking. He's not rich. He's not in shape. He's got a belly or whatever. But I can't stop thinking about him. So what is that quality? And that is the essence of mystique in my mind, which is a word we don't overuse. So we can use it. Vulnerability, I think, is saying, okay, I'm just going to tell you that, I've been in a, I don't know how to do it. Go ahead, Jordan, help me out here.
Yeah, I think it would be useful to draw out a couple of different images based on what you've seen from the hundreds of men that pass through Bucharest and your social circle and your coaching workshops and so on. Can you give an image of what a vulnerability that still remains rich in mystique looks like? And can you give an image of what vulnerability, which is actually suckiness, to use your word, what that is like, and how these are really different?
Well, the suckiness is, I think, is the layer of vulnerability where I get up in the morning, I'm lonely, my life, my wife left me, and I'm trying to get my mojo back, and I have trouble getting it up, and I'm not sure about my manliness anymore, and my job is not motivating me anymore, and and so you bring that, that's the real me, and you bring this hangdog feel, like the world, and you bring this Woody Allen you bring this Woody Allen type of patheticness to the conversation on your date. For instance, you say, I'm just going to be authentic. I'm going to be vulnerable to you. I get up in the morning. I don't have a lot of motivation. I'm not excited about things. That's kind of what I'm saying is you bring forth your troubles and dump it on somebody who didn't earn that. It's not fair. It's not fair to dump your troubles on somebody. Keep that to yourself. The opposite of that is being vulnerable in a about yourself in an intriguing way, is to be curious about your journey, and you express that. I worked in this job for 20 years, and it's just not motivating me anymore. I think about this day and night. This is good. This is your date. You say, I've worked in this job for insurance. I've been working in an insurance job for 20 years, and I've lost the motivation for it. I don't wake up excited about it. That's interesting. And I want to find a next phase for me, my next 20 years, that's vulnerable.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the suckiness element to it.
It's interesting that you say that is vulnerable, because it is fueled by, you say, curiosity. There's also a sense of thrust. Like to be able to sit there and be like, God, I don't like my job right now. It's really not working out. This is going on. This is going on. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know. But wow, like there's got to be some next phase. Like even to speak to the things that are not working in my life with a sense of vigor, that you would say that's vulnerable.
100%. That's to me, that's what it is. That's what it feels like to me. So you could say to her this, and she says, what do you do for a living? Well, that's an interesting question, because I'm thinking about this right now, and like I'm sitting in a question, which is really, and I'm not sure my next step. I don't know what to do next, but I'll tell you, I'm working at this insurance company for 20 years, and maybe I continue to work there. There's some advantages. I don't know, but it's a curiosity laden thing, as opposed to my life sucks. I can't get out of bed in the morning. I hate it.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe you're not saying that to her, but there's a fine line difference, and I guess I guess it's one is laden with curiosity, one is laden with patheticism, if that's a word.
Okay.
With no hope, or I don't know. Maybe I'm not saying this right. It's the same thing as if you said, listen, like, let me think. Mystique is the thing that I talk about. And mystique is there's two things you need for mystique. This is what I teach my What Would Zan Do course. That I think. Maybe there's more, but to have her like dreaming about you. I met this guy yesterday. To call her girlfriend and say, I met this guy. He must be going to date on Thursday. What should I do? What should I do? What should I wear? Should I go? I'm thinking about him. There's something about him. He was not really my type. But there's something intriguing about him. Maybe I should go on this date. That kind of feel. How to foster that? That's the content. That's what I would call mystique. And there's two things you need from mystique. You need to be not completely available all the time. In other words, texting her every 10 minutes. Hey, it was nice meeting you. I was wearing the red shirt, and ha ha ha. 10 minutes later, hey, you have this quality of how do I say it? Not distance, but just not giving her something to dream about because you're not around.
Yeah.
You're floating and doing your thing, okay? And the second thing you need for mystique is a larger than life personality. In other words, you have to have something going on in you that you're dreaming about so that she latches onto that dream. So if you say, okay, well, I met you in the park here and you're walking your dog. Yeah, the dog's nice. Yeah, I like dogs. I like cats too. And what do you do for a living? Well, I work at this insurance company for the last 20 years. I sell insurance. And there's nothing in that is dreamy to you. There's nothing in there wondering about the space of you. And if you come along and you say, you know what, I'm working in insurance for 20 years. I've been thinking about my life. What should I do? What's the next phase? Now there's something that you're caught up in and she's caught up in. So you have a larger than life personality. You have something that is more than watching TV, watching sports, drinking beer. You have something more that you're fascinated about for yourself. She will catch up onto that. I talked about in the book, The Alabaster Girl. It's being caught up in an adventure that isn't her.
Yeah.
And so you have that. You have a larger than life personality, and she can't stop thinking about you because she's worked in her company for 20 years, and she's thinking, I wish I had that. He's thinking about changing his life. He can do that. I wish I had that. So that's the opposite, I think, of vulnerability, which is suckiness, which is just blah. Okay, I'm gonna tell you the real me. I don't really like wearing this suit because I'd rather wear my sweatpants and my t-shirt. But it's just dumping information that doesn't add quality to the mystique. And mystique is not being aloof or distant or artificially unavailable. It's just that you're caught up in something, and wow, I met you, and look what I'm caught up in. Can you see that? Come with me.
Yeah,
that's the spirit.
So I think the two images of vulnerability are pretty clear. You're saying there is the vulnerability which is infused with a curiosity, a sense of adventure, a questioning, it's thrusting, it's moving forward. And it can be vulnerable and not put together from the person. But then you've got this hangdog, neurotic Woody Allen, trouble dumping kind of vulnerability, right? So I think that's clear. But you also mentioned something key, which is fine line. Because it's clear there are examples of people that are both on vastly on either end of that spectrum. Where I imagine most men end up is they're on a fine line, which is their vulnerability has had enough of a compelling mystique to it to create some interest in her, but yet their vulnerability contains just a little bit, perhaps a little too much of the sappy hangdog thing that kills the mystique. But for a while they're in the game, so to speak. For a while she's interested and she's texting back and they go on a few dates, but he loses it. So I think that's where it gets painful and confusing for men, is they don't know which side of the fine line that they're on, and how practically can I, if I'm somewhere close to the fine line, make sure that my vulnerability is more on the mystique laden,
Yeah.
inspiring, energizing side of things.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, it's a conscious choice. If you're not, as we talk about in the Amrati membership, designing your life, and you're just reacting, you have nothing for her to dream about. You're just an existent body, an existent mind. There's there's nothing for her to be to be excited about and be curious about, because you're not leading that curiosity. You're just existing. It's the same thing as we talked about in a previous podcast. If you're married to a woman who has no intellectual curiosity and she's just watching TV and doing her nails and shopping on your credit card and waiting for you to be her entertainment, and you have any kind of desire to learn and grow and excel in certain things and be wondered, you're not going to be happy in that relationship at all. You won't feel fulfilled. So the other way around is more true. If you are just a guy who's working in an insurance company, you're trying to be compelling to women, you might get a wife and have 3 children, and maybe it's unremarkable, and maybe that's okay. Maybe you just have a simple, the book Stoner. You read the book Stoner, which is, to me, is a remarkable book. John Williams wrote the book Stoner, and it's about this guy who just lives an unremarkable life, but it's fascinating to just peer into his whole life. He's a professor, gets married at one point. And I want to reread that book. And I don't reread books ever, but it's on my list to reread because it fascinated me in some way.
So it's a book about a guy who really had a mediocre life, but there's some way in which it's told, or that the protagonist sees it, that actually has the mediocrity transcend its circumstances in a way.
I think about it a lot. Like, I think about the book Stoner a lot, actually. Weird. I just realized that. Because it's an unremarkable life that becomes remarkable because, I don't know, I can't describe it. But he wrote Butcher's Crossing and put out this book, and it was not a hit, or nobody knew about it. And then now people are putting on their top 10 lists retroactively after he's dead, but there's something about it that is fundamental to the inquiry that I have all these 25 years or more for myself, which is motivation and why, so, and if you have that question of motivation, you will not be, your vulnerability will be tinged with curiosity and motivation and why, as opposed to, okay, I'm just doing this. That's the key. You can have an unremarkable life and grow a garden and have 3 children who grew up to be unremarkable people, but that's okay too. That's a valuable, that's a beautiful thing. If it's if that's how you want, you want a comfortable, relaxed life, nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying you need to be like all adventurous, but it's a chosen, and you're curious about that. You're in love with that. You're in love with the idea that you have this life that you've created and these 3 children that you've created. You love it. There's something about you that yearns for it, longs for it, is proud of it, is happy about it. You're proud of your wife. That's a cool thing. And you're proud of what you're trying to do with your life. The next phase, I got to quit this insurance job because I'm not feeling fulfilled. Now you're a cool person. Now you have mystique, because everybody wants to be caught up in that.
So if I ask you with all this in mind, if I ask you a very blunt, closed question, is vulnerability valuable and important? What's your
yes, I think
tiny answer?
Yeah, I think, well, like I said, the word, you got to define the word, because vulnerability in a marriage, for instance, you've been with somebody for 30 years. She knows everything about you, all your hopes and dreams, all your dreads, what makes you cry, what makes you sad, what you've lost. She knows all that. That to me is like but it's a shared It's a shared experience. It's a shared vulnerability. And if you try and be that guy on your third date, you don't have anything shared. You don't have a shared history, shared vulnerability. You're trying to create that. I think that's what it is. You're trying to create a shared vulnerability that isn't earned.
Oh, okay. So you just wriggled completely out of my closed question. But this is really important because the question is, you know, for those of us who have read from the Gospel of Vulnerability and so on, and we're trying to bear all in the service of sacred connection and with the women of the world, and so on and so on. The question then becomes, well, I would like to speed up the intimacy that I have because intimacy and connection is thrilling, and that's where I want to be. I don't want to be in the shallows. I want to have something deep and powerful with a woman. So
Yeah.
if vulnerability has to be earned, when can we go there? Like, give me the soonest that I can possibly start sharing this kind of stuff. How long do I have to stay banal and safe and
Well, I guess
keeping
it's
myself
like
to
if it's
myself
wrapped,
in a way?
you can, any of this can be exposed and said if it's wrapped in curiosity and wonder.
Yeah.
Then it's a good thing. Let's say you have erectile dysfunction. Let's just invent that.
Yeah.
If you're afraid of it and desperate about it, which is understandable. I mean, that's something that, you know. So, and you dump it on her and say, okay, I'm gonna be vulnerable and say, listen, I can't get it up anymore. I struggle with it. So, and you think I'm just going to expose this to her and let the chips fall where they may. She either accepts it or not, or you can be curious about it and say, you know what's happened for you the last 5 years, and I don't know why, and I'm trying to solve it, but you wrap the way you wrap it and say, listen, I could go to bed with you tonight, and I would love to do that. And believe me, I would love to do it. And I lately I've been having trouble, and I don't know if I can get it up. And I want, you know, there's something different in the expression of that. That is honorable, and women go, okay, that I understand. I have my own hangups, my own troubles. I have my own insecurities and my own medical things that I'm embarrassed about. They understand that. I'm trying to articulate this and put this in words because it's a feel to me as opposed to a real thing. But it's really your own perspective on your own self and your own life that either makes it a suckiness or a wonderment. And I mean it as a wonderment because we're all broken. You know, we all have some medical insecurity or something about our body that we would like to change, or something that we're embarrassed about, something from our past that we're embarrassed about, something from our present that we're embarrassed about. And we'd be mortified if people found out, sort of thing, right? We all have that. She does too. So it's your approach to those things which are naturally occurring, and they're going to happen to us, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you for sure have something that you would not want to expose. It's your personal approach that to have perspective, jump back out of yourself, look at it and say, okay, I'm really worried about this medical thing, and I could dump it on her, or I could be curious about it. I don't know. I'm saying a nuance here, and it's hard for me to articulate.
Yeah. I think the crux of it is when you share the vulnerable thing, does the energy tank? Or can you share the vulnerable thing in a way that kind of keeps things afloat? Right?
And maybe that's all it is.
Is your share sucking her and yourself down some kind of plug hole?
Right.
And I think with a lot of men there is there's some layers to this, but there can be an expectation, even quite an entitled expectation, which is I'm going to be vulnerable now, and I want you to actually hear me and validate me and balm my pain with your graceful listening.
Right.
You know, hold space for me because I'm being vulnerable right now. So the one of the shadow sides of the culture of vulnerability is that it can serve a culture of entitlement. That because I'm used to a safe space with my psychologist or with my personal development group, when I go dating, I expect that from you as well. And if you're not playing that game, actually you're a narcissist and not an empath, etc.,
Exactly.
etc. Right? So even very
Exactly.
subtly, I over the years, my exploration with vulnerability has been really interesting. And I would say that it's a little bit like a suit. Vulnerability is like a suit that men try on. And given the man's body type and his posture and his ability just to wear the fabric, you either need a bigger size or a smaller size. You need to adjust the arm or take it in a little bit or create a bit of space. It can be quite difficult to know, is the way that you wear your vulnerability well tailored for you and for the moment and for the woman or the culture that you're in? That's a big consideration. And what we see in our workshops, because we often line up a man and a woman, we put a lot of attention on the two of them. And, what do you feel in the presence of this man and the way that he speaks and he stands and the energy of his voice and his communication?
Right. How is he represented?
How does that make you feel on the inside of your body? And a woman is either going to be, well, I close subtly, or I contract, like my guts, my heart, my sex, or I have to kind of, either he gives off an energy that makes a woman kind of recoil or close slightly, and it might be slight, or he speaks with an energy that has her soften and open. And it's very clear the direction you want to go in, right? You want to be a presence that creates softening and opening, and with that, bubbles of attraction. These are the things that come later. And by figuring out this stuff, you can start to recalibrate, like, what is the way that I wear my vulnerability that is an elegant fit?
That's right. That's nice. I like that,
because
metaphor.
We all have a vulnerability, but you want to at least feel dignified in the dress of it, and in the way that you walk.
Like you chose it on purpose. You consciously are wearing it in a conscious way. Yes.
So in my story, and this is why vulnerability was such a surprise theme to me, in my own head, I was not as high in status or attractiveness or classic masculinity as I thought I needed to be, right?
Okay.
So in my mind, I had a sense, if I had more muscles, more money, more looks and charm or extroversion, then I would be more attractive, right?
Sure.
Typical mindset. And so I would try and hide the ways that I was not that, like just put together, try and look cool.
Right.
And then I got the feedback again and again from women, which was they actually wanted more vulnerability from me. And what they actually saw was that I was a guy who was very well put together and in charge of his life and going in an independent direction.
Oh, I see.
And they actually found me strong and confident and actually unrelatable in a way. Women would be like, well, I want to get to know who you are, but I can't, you seem to be hiding it, or I can't quite feel who you are. But actually you're very strong and confident, and I've got no reservations about that. And that shocked me, because I thought I was not that confident or not that strong, and I wanted to appear even more strong. And because I did that, then I would close myself off and be even less vulnerable, perpetuating the cycle, and women felt disconnected. So my journey has been, I would say 80 to 90% of it has been be willing to be more vulnerable more of the time and speak from my heart. And then the question that I had for a good couple of years was, what does it mean to speak to my heart? How do I know? Like, how do I know? Because I speak from my mouth, and that's connected to my mind. Where does the heart come into this? And if I don't feel that kind of stuff from within me, it's difficult to get a sense of it. So that was my direction, actually, was to soften my body, feel my body, and speak things. Because vulnerability, again, we need to define the word, but one of my definitions of vulnerability is I don't actually know which way it's going to go. Like, this might have her open and be a lot more connected to me, or it might make her judge me and never want to see me again, and then ridicule me with her WhatsApp chat of girlfriends later on about who she dated. So to be really vulnerable, I think you have to actually be willing to walk that line. Something comes out your mouth, you don't know which way it's going to go. And then there's a feeling of that, which is, oh shit, if I say the thing, I might regret it later. And the vulnerability is actually like a quiver in the chest or in the stomach. There's butterflies. But when it creates more connection and attraction, it's the essence of life. Like, wow, I shared something that was actually a genuine risk, and it actually made her more engaged and feel closer to me. There's an ecstasy to that. You see where the beauty of that is, right? But the vulnerability has a feeling. It's not like if I talk about my parents and my childhood, that doesn't, just because I speak about that stuff doesn't mean it's vulnerable. I can be completely in my head and full of analysis and judgment. And guys also have their favorite vulnerable story. You know, this thing happened at school. It sounds like it's self-effacing, but it's actually not. It's a well-calibrated routine in order to draw out empathy as a kind of manipulation, right? But the real vulnerability is this. So once I discovered that feeling, it opened up a lot in my relationships, right? So this was the essence for me. But we have a lot of members, and I would say it's grown. I would say that older, I would say I'm 42, 40 years old upwards. Most of these men in general need to understand what it means to feel their heart and be a bit more vulnerable. 40 and below, I would say there's a cultural movement, which is actually these are men that have grown up with a lot more culture of vulnerability around them, and it tends to serve younger men to bracket their vulnerability a lot more and focus on a situation of focus on what is strong about them.
Yeah.
Like the vulnerability is too floppy. I don't know. Again, there's suffering and pain without curiosity and direction. Like you spoke before about direction. So most of the younger men that I've worked with closely in workshop the last 15 years, the question is, how can you speak something vulnerable about yourself in like 1 or 2 sentences and then zip it? Okay, you said the thing, but what if you say the vulnerable thing that you need to say in 2 sentences, and then you deliver the message, you deliver the feeling, and then you don't sap, you don't collapse, you don't bleed it all over, nor do you pin on her the expectation that she has to give you some kind of listening or validation. I think this is a good practice. But again, it's coming back to the suit idea. Are you know, is it well fitting to your overall energy? And are you speaking something in a way that resonates? You know, do you pluck the guitar chord of your feeling, your speech that creates a good vibration in her?
Yeah, as you're talking, I see 3 panels in my mind. 3 ways of being. The number one is the pathetic panel, which is you start dating this woman, for instance. Let me just try and put it practically. And it's going really well. And she starts to get a little distant, and you get needy and start texting her and showing up on her doorstep and really just dumping out, let's say being vulnerable and dumping yourself out. The second panel, or say the third panel, is you acting like I don't care, which is I'm confident all the time. I'm in control of my emotions.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, and internally you're in turmoil, but you try and act cool, calm, and collected all the time, which is what you talked about. She doesn't give her a chance to see a vulnerable side of yourself, because you're always confident. You're always in control, and give her no opportunity to care for you in that loving way that women need in their man. They need him to be a strong father figure. I wrote this in The Alabaster Girl. And they also need him to be a little boy that needs saving. So, and I'm saying that very quickly, but there's a whole spectrum to that. There's a whole idea behind that. And then the middle panel is she's disappearing on you, and you reach out and say, you know, my sweetie, I miss our times together. It's not needy. It's not sucky. I miss being with you. I miss your face. I miss your smiling face. And she says, well, I'm really busy with, you know, dealing with my situation here. My father's sick, and my 2 kids, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, so give me a break, sort of thing. And our kindness to her and to ourselves is to say, take all the grace you need, and I miss you. That's not needy at all. And I would love to see you again. But you know, there's something in that middle space where you are open and vulnerable, but not being all confident. Okay, act like I have other options, and okay, she's not contacting me. Screw her. I'm just going to go dark too. It's not that that heavy, concentrated, overconfident, overcompensating type of energy, and it's not the sucky, pathetic energy that, well, you know what? Yeah, you internally, what you're really thinking subconsciously is, I'm reaching out to her, and she's not reaching back to me. She's got dealing with something with her kids and her father's in the hospital. Well, what about me? Do I not mean anything to her? Like I see it kind of panelized like that.
Yeah.
And the middle one is grace, giving her freedom of space and an invitation. This is invitation. This is sucking and dragging and blaming. This panel here is inviting. This panel here is like, whatever. I have options. I'll pretend I'm seeing other girls when I'm really not. But that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Overconfident.
So some of the good words I had for this over the years is collapsed, posturing.
Yes.
But then the really interesting space is the one in the middle, and you're modeling, I think, how we're defining it, economy of words.
Yes.
But also
no pressure on her at all. What this gives is, here's pressure from the first panel, which is, if you don't pay attention to me, you suck as a woman, and you're not, because I did all this stuff for you. And the confident guy, the overconfident guy, is putting pressure on her, like, okay, well, you pick my way or the highway. You choose. You want to, blame, make excuses like that. Your kids and your husband or your father.
And in both of these examples, these can be said or they can be unsaid. But even if you're having this mental attitude and it's unsaid, it will still be communicated, no matter how you try to hide it.
Those are both pressurizing her and making her go, I can't handle it right now. And the middle panel is like giving her grace and space and openness and invitation, etc. It's not giving up your dignity and, she's not paying attention to me, and I'm more important than that. Which some of the community back in the day used to teach that, shore the door.
Yeah.
Posturing. Yeah.
So this place in the middle is, I think, what people really want to feel and understand for themselves. I think there's an economy of language, but also I think, and you're not doing all of the things like justification, explanation, trying to make the big story, trying to give reasons why you should be like, all of that is cut away, and you're left with a core sentence or two about what you feel, what you want. But the body, I think, is really important. Like, whatever you feel, let's say in your chest, you just allow that to be felt. Because you speak your one sentence and it's like, oh no, I feel my heart is aching, or I really want her, or I have all these emotions, but you allow them to be there. And then you speak. And I found in beautiful moments of this, I speak my one or two, the one true sentence that I know I speak it, but it's tinged fully with the emotion that I have. My emotion is soft and it's not guarded. And that really gets through to her. Like, it completely transmits something to her system. She feels me. And then I'm like, okay, now whatever my feelings are, I'm not going to make them your problem, but I'm going to sit with them, and then I'm going to go and do something else, right? So I don't shut down my own feelings, because the reason that I'm reaching out to her to try and have something anyways, because I have feelings and I need to act on them. I feel the need to act on them, right?
Yes.
So there was a couple of big questions. Okay, so here's the question that is too uncomfortable for a lot of men to ask. You've had a few dates and it's been good, and you start to have this vulnerable feeling, which is, think I'm falling in love with this woman. This is where things get really hairy for men. Oh no, I think I'm falling in love. Well, anyone who ever fell in love and had a painful time of it is going to try and guard themselves, try and either look really cool in this feeling, or the tendency to collapse or to become aloof is heightened because it's so intense to just be with what you feel and what you desire. So let's say you've dated a woman, it's been 7-10 times, maybe you knew her for a couple of months, you really get the sense you're falling in love, and I wake up, I'm thinking about this girl, I go to bed at night, I'm thinking about this girl, everything is just good, and it has to be her. All the other women in the world disappear, there's only one on my horizon. What's the most beautiful way for a man to deal with the feeling of thinking he's fallen in love.
Well,
which is the ultimate vulnerability in a way, because if I've fallen in love, any strategy to try and take the strong role in the power dynamic is gone. You know, she's got you. You're seduced. You've
anything you try is fake.
Exactly.
Fake. Yeah. Because now you are automatically vulnerable because you fall in love. It triggers you because you could be hurt, like you were in the past, you know, and you're afraid of that. So there's a whole spectrum of nuance of thinking and hopes and fears that are all blended together. And you hope it's going to be good because you really like her. And I understand that. And you don't want to mess it up, and you don't know what she's thinking, and you wish you knew what she was thinking. And you know, Thursday night, and you don't know what your next move is. Should I text her? Should I call her? What is she doing right now? You're thinking this. What is she doing right now? That's a kind of a cool thing, cool place to be. But that middle panel will save you. If you're the left panel, and then I texted her at 4 p.m. today. It's 7 p.m. and it's unread. And then we invent a whole bunch of scenarios. Okay, well, what does that mean? Does she not care? Is she, and when we invent a bunch of dire situations that could mean that she's no longer interested, especially if she doesn't message or you don't hear from her until the next day. It's read. It's read at 9 o'clock at night and there's no answer. Now you're just hyperventilating because I thought, I sent this nice message to her and she didn't respond. And the middle panel gives you the curiosity that you are really attracted to her and really love the idea, and also know that some things don't work out because of logistics, circumstances, situations. She could be caught up in something that she's moving to Thailand in a week and you're never going to see her again, or she's got a real medical emergency that she's dealing with. You just don't know. And to love the fact that you're smitten by her, and love the fact that you hope it goes forward in a great way for you, and also love the fact that if it doesn't, you had the feeling of it, which is a hard thing to do. It's grace to yourself, grace to her. It's a hopeful energy, and it's a leaning in energy. This middle panel, you lean in because you're excited, and you're not hiding it. You're not being the guy in the right panel, which is overconfident. Maybe I'll text her back after 3 days just to show that, and really want to text her back immediately. It makes no sense to me, right? And you're not sucky, blaming her or blaming yourself for thinking, okay, well, she didn't message me until the next day, so that or she hasn't messaged me yet, so that means that all these scenarios that I should have been more funny, or I should have tried to kiss her on that last date.
Boy, what a suck. Yeah.
Right.
That mental voice.
Yeah.
This is where I, growing up with the kind of ambitions that I had as a younger person, I never really was into poetry or art or literature. Not that much. Had a few moments here or there. But it's these experiences of falling in love and the vulnerability of that, and losing a woman, having felt so close, that really made what I see in film or what I see in poetry or what I can read so meaningful. Because most of the great lovers, particularly the mystic lovers of the past, they came so agonizingly close, but they always lost. And it's the poetry of loss, which is their heartbreak poetry.
Yeah, exactly.
Because every man who ever won a woman then becomes so insanely busy, he doesn't have time to write.
That's right. That's right.
Like that also can be a poison chalice, right? So the lover who just loses out writes some of the most beautiful things. I think we've spoken about Heidegger's theory of attunement before. Yeah. The idea is that each of us automatically has an attunement through which we see everything in the universe, right? Yes. So you might see everything in the universe as a performance or an achievement. You might see everything in the universe as a piece of technology. And if you see yourself and women and relationships and sex and seduction as an objective, measurable act of performance or machinery, then you're going to look at a woman not reciprocating your love and think that you failed in your performance. And then you're going to objectivize yourself in your performance and put on a lot of suffering. So a lot of men who have done very well in their careers, a meritocratic kind of rise to the top in the world of finance or something like that, when they lose with women, they can't hack it because it's not a measurable system that they can understand. And they try and objectivize themselves for the loss. So the suffering of losing out in love is immense. Also, if you see the world as technology, you're thinking, well, how can I put in a different input into this texting with a girl to get a different output, i.e. she opens up and feels attracted and likes me. And if you're used to working with technology all day long and you see the whole world as technology, there's something unconscious that sees love and winning and losing in love as a technological affair. So maybe I need to go back and do some more coaching and optimize myself so that I will be, have enough bandwidth for the next woman to come along, and then I'm going to tweak my systems and my dating funnel so that I increase my probability of getting the conversion rate that I want. Right. So like, even though it sounds silly, this process goes on in most men's minds to some degree.
Right. 100%.
And what Heidegger ends up in, which is so affirmative of the Ars Amorata, is to take a poetic attunement, which is, if you look at all of life as poetry, women as poetry, yourself as poetry, your fumbled attempt to fall in love and to woo her as poetry, your wins, your losses, if you take them all as poetic unfoldings, instances, then when you lose, you are left with the poetry of your defeat.
Yes.
Which is vulnerable and painful, but you can start seeing a sweetness in that because there wasn't something faulty in you as a system, or like you as a performer or a piece of technology didn't fail. You tried to love and you failed. And that is one of the great initiations of all humankind. If you never if you never fell in love and tried to make a woman feel the same and failed spectacularly, or failed just by an inch, then you missed something. So for me,
and this you can't create art.
This is salvational, right? And then
100%.
What do I do with my vulnerability, or what do I do with my heartache, or what do I do with this feeling of having fallen in love? I've got no one to give it to. Well, maybe it will take you a few months to get over it, but in the meantime, your writing will be infused with something new, or the way that you go to work and create something in your work will be dripping with a different feeling. So for me, this is the only way out of the vulnerable ache of losing. But I think it's also the cultivation of how to be with vulnerability. You see it as a beautiful thing.
Yeah, 100%. And with curiosity and wonder, you're massively curious about your human existence, about your existence on Earth, and your losses, and the idea of amor fati, to love your fate. So you said it very well. I don't have anything to add to that, Jordan. Just like very articulated well.
I'll just add, this is a little vulnerable. In the past, when I did this a lot at school. I did this a lot at school. Yeah. When I asked out the girl I really wanted and she said no, I'd go and find another girl, and then I would let all the sappiness out on the other girl, and I'd find a nice girl who wanted to listen to all of this. And I'd be like, I just tried to ask out your friend, and now I want to and now I'm going to tell you how I feel. I'm heartbroken. And there's always a woman who's willing to listen to that, because then she's got an open, soft man. It's interesting, right? So I would always find an outlet somewhere. You might, maybe the listener is going to recognize themselves. You find an outlet for the sappy feelings. But one of the coolest things I think that we have in the Amorati is, like, rather than having a brotherhood that's going to judge you for having a sappy moment, or they're going to try and analyze your technological mistake, to sit in a group of brothers that, like, laugh with you, celebrate you. Wow, you actually showed up. You did this and this and this. That was good. And now you're burning in the vulnerability of heartache. Welcome to the club, man. That's beautiful. Like, you're alive. To be in to have fellow men validate that you're in that experience right now and it's just where you need to be, I think is one of the greatest things that you can have.
That's great.
Because otherwise it's a lonely, endless dark tunnel for a lot of people.
Yep.
If you don't have the support to see it, to see what is vulnerable to you with curiosity and
that's
agency.
Why we have this membership, which we've had for many years, and I'm part of it. You're part of it. It's something that's in our psyche, and we have this conversation. And we want to know this, and you know, the tide rises all the boats, as the cliche says, you know, and so we want to. I want to be caught up in this conversation of curiosity and reminded of that middle panel, which I call leaning in, as opposed to the sucky panel, and opposed to the what did you call it?
Posturing, aloof.
Posture.
Yeah.
I want to lean in my experience in life towards myself, toward the women I meet, to my relationship with my girl, the whole thing. So vulnerability. I think we did. I don't know how long this has been, but we've done a definition of that word, which needs defining because it doesn't.
All right. So to all the people that have been waiting for this episode, I'd love to see you in the comments. Write down what is your takeaway. Have we managed to describe something that explains your situation to you?
Yeah.
And therefore, what is the next piece that you would need to cultivate? So please answer us with that questions. And then if you have an extraordinary circumstance that we haven't addressed, feel free to write that as well, and we may touch on it in a future episode. All right. Thank you, Zan. Thank you, Zan. And thank you for watching and listening. We'll be back next week.
Join our membership.